All right, get ready, because today we are going deep on a really interesting population trend
Yeah.
that honestly I think is going to surprise a lot of people. It's the huge growth we've seen in sub-Saharan African immigration to the U.S.
Absolutely.
I mean, the numbers are seriously eye-opening.
Huge numbers.
Since 1980,
Oh, yeah.
this population has grown like 16 times larger.
Yeah, 16-fold increase.
It's incredible.
It's not just a little uptick. It's like a tidal wave.
Yeah, and it's changing the whole landscape of America.
Absolutely.
So to really dig into all of this,
Yeah.
we've got some awesome data from a 2022 Migration Policy Institute report that focuses specifically on this population. And then we're also going to bring in some insights from a more recent article from 2024 that looks at the African immigrant experience, but very specifically in the DMV.
Right.
So that's D.C., Maryland, Virginia, for anybody who's not familiar. I think it's going to be cool to see both the big picture and then zoom in on a particular region.
Right, that like really personal side of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
So first things first, like how many people are we even talking about here when we say sub-Saharan African immigrants?
So in 2019, there were 2.1 million living in the U.S., and that's about 5% of the total foreign-born population.
Gotcha.
And that number, that 2.1 million, is projected to more than double by 2060.
Wow.
So this community is going to become even more prominent.
Yeah, so this is not a small trend. This is like a huge shift that's happening.
Right.
And what I think is really interesting is we're not just talking about like one monolithic group here, right?
Totally.
We're talking about individuals from 51 different countries in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah, it's a super diverse group.
So each with its own unique culture, history, reasons for coming to the U.S.
Absolutely.
Like this is
the whole tapestry.
Yeah, it's very complex. But we got to start somewhere. So what are like the top sending countries?
Yeah, the top 5 are Nigeria, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, and Somalia.
Gotcha.
Just knowing those 5, I mean, it helps us kind of grasp like the complexity of this wave of immigration.
Yeah, just the starting point.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2.1 million and growing, representing this incredible array of cultures.
Absolutely.
But where are they all going?
Right.
Are there certain places that are like magnets for this population?
Yeah, well, they're actually more spread out than you might think.
Okay.
But there are definitely some states with higher concentrations, like Texas, New York, Maryland, California, and Minnesota.
Gotcha.
They tend to cluster a bit.
And that's where the DMV focus of one of the articles comes in. What is it about that area that's drawing folks in?
Yeah, so if we look closer at the metro level, the DMV area really stands out. Washington, D.C. specifically, along with places like New York, Dallas, Minneapolis, Atlanta. There's something about those spots that's attracting a lot of sub-Saharan African immigrants.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll come back to that in a bit, but I want to highlight something that I thought was super interesting in the report. It has to do with...
What is it?
Education levels.
Oh, yeah.
Of this group.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, because I think a lot of people have assumptions about immigrant populations.
That's sure.
And they might be surprised to hear this.
Yeah.
Like, on average, are we talking...
So on average, sub-Saharan African immigrants are actually more educated than the overall U.S. population.
That's not the narrative you usually hear.
It's not.
I mean, is it like a little bit more?
No, it's significant. 42% of them have a bachelor's degree or higher.
That's a lot higher.
Yeah, way above the average for native-born Americans and other immigrant groups.
Interesting.
So it's pretty striking statistic.
Yeah, so that makes me wonder then,
yeah,
are they able to really use that education here in the U.S.?
It's a good question, and we'll definitely explore that later on when we look more at their economic situation.
Gotcha. All right, so let's bust another stereotype while we're at it.
Okay, I like it.
What about language?
Right.
Obviously, we've got folks coming from all these different countries. So is there like a dominant language within the sub-Saharan African immigrant community, or is it just like a real mix?
It's really interesting. So they are more likely to speak English at home than other immigrant groups. 26% of them speak only English at home.
Wow. Okay.
It's a higher percentage than you might expect.
Yeah, I would not have expected that.
Yeah.
Is English like widely spoken in sub-Saharan Africa?
Oh, yeah. It actually makes sense when you remember that. English is an official language in many of those countries.
Oh, okay.
So that's part of it.
So they're coming here.
Yeah.
with a higher level of education on average
Mm-hmm.
and more likely to be proficient in English
Right.
than a lot of other immigrant groups.
Exactly.
You'd think that would translate into success in the job market, right?
You would think so.
Logically.
Yeah, you would think so.
But I'm sensing a but.
Yeah.
All right, lay it on me.
Like many things in life.
Okay.
It's not quite that simple.
All right, so let's get into it.
Okay.
What's the job market actually looking like for sub-Saharan African immigrants?
Okay, well, they definitely have a strong work ethic.
Okay.
Their labor force participation rate is 76%.
Wow.
Which is higher than both native-born Americans and other immigrant groups.
So they're not afraid of hard work?
Not at all.
All right, so what kinds of jobs are they doing?
They tend to have jobs that are very similar to U.S.-born workers. So a lot of them are in management, business, science, the arts.
Gotcha. So they're contributing to the economy.
Absolutely.
But you said there was a but.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Right.
Even though they're highly educated and they work hard, their median household income is actually lower than other immigrant groups and the U.S.-born population.
That doesn't seem right.
It's a head-scratcher.
It really is. And are there poverty rates?
Yeah, poverty rates are higher, too.
Okay, so something's not adding up here.
Yeah, there's a disconnect somewhere.
Yeah. Why are they not seeing the same economic returns as their counterparts?
It's a good question.
Like, what's the missing piece here?
I think to understand that, we need to look at their paths to the U.S.
Okay.
Like, how did they get here?
Makes sense.
Their immigration journeys, the systems they encountered.
Okay, so let's get into those immigration pathways then.
Let's do it.
Because I think that's where we'll start to
see how those individual stories connect with these bigger trends.
Exactly. And I think we're going to find some surprises in that data.
I think so, too.
About why they chose to come to the U.S.
All right, I'm ready to be surprised.
Okay, let's do it. One of the things that really jumps out from the data is how many sub-Saharan African immigrants came to the U.S. pretty recently.
Oh, really?
Like a large chunk of them arrived after 2000.
Huh.
Like 72%.
Wow. So it's a much newer wave of immigration than some other groups.
Exactly.
Okay. So what does that mean?
I mean, it's got to have some impact on their experiences here, right?
I would think so.
Yeah, and how they're integrating into society.
Right, right. And then if you look at the specific pathways they used to immigrate, it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
So sub-Saharan Africans are actually more likely to have entered as refugees or through something called the diversity visa program than other immigrant groups.
The diversity visa program?
Yeah.
Remind me how that works.
Sure. It's also known as the green card lottery.
Oh, yeah?
And it was created to boost immigration from countries with historically low rates of immigration to the U.S.
Okay.
So it's basically a lottery system. And it's been a pretty significant pathway for a lot of sub-Saharan Africans.
So it's all about diversifying where people are coming from to the U.S.
Trying to even things out a little bit.
Yeah.
But here's another interesting thing.
Okay.
They're less likely to have come through employment-based pathways compared to other immigrant groups.
So they're not necessarily coming for work?
It seems that way.
Huh. So what else?
I mean, we can't make generalizations about an entire population, but it suggests that a lot of them are seeking something beyond just economic opportunity.
Okay, so things like family reunification?
Exactly. Could be that.
Escaping conflict?
Could be fleeing persecution.
Or just like a better life in general.
Yeah, a better quality of life.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a good reminder that there are a lot of different reasons why people immigrate.
Right. You can't assume it's always the same.
Exactly. It's complex.
Yeah.
And it also might help explain those income disparities we talked about before.
Right.
If a lot of these folks are coming through non-employment pathways, they might be facing like a whole different set of challenges when it comes to finances.
So it's not just as simple as, oh, they're highly educated.
Right.
They'll get a good job, they'll be fine.
Exactly.
There's more to it.
Yeah, it's way more nuanced.
Okay, so we've got this more recent wave of immigration, greater reliance on things like the diversity visa program or coming as refugees. And that could potentially be linked to some of those economic challenges.
Yeah, definitely a connection there.
Okay, that's starting to paint a pretty interesting picture.
That is.
And to add even more to that, let's talk about naturalization.
Oh, yeah, good point.
So people who don't know, naturalization, that's the process of becoming a U.S. citizen, right?
Yep, that's it.
So how many sub-Saharan African immigrants actually go through that process.
Okay, so the naturalization rates for this group are higher than the overall foreign-born population.
Okay.
So 56% of sub-Saharan African immigrants are naturalized citizens.
Gotcha.
Compared to 52% for all foreign-born individuals.
Interesting.
So they're not just coming here, they're putting down roots.
Yeah, it seems like
they're making a commitment.
Yeah, they're choosing to become part of American society.
Exactly.
Right.
And if you look at specific nationalities, it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
Somalis and Ethiopians have particularly high naturalization rates.
Wow. What do you think is driving that?
You know, it makes you wonder about their stories.
Yeah.
Why are they choosing to become U.S. citizens at such high rates?
Yeah, like what are those individual journeys?
It's all about those individual journeys.
Yeah.
Stories of resilience, seeking stability, pursuing the American dream.
Right.
Each one is unique.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to talk about these big trends.
Right.
We got to remember that these are real people.
Absolutely.
Making life-altering decisions.
It's easy to forget the human side of it.
It really is.
But it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
As we dive into the challenges and opportunities.
Right. So speaking of challenges, let's go back to our DMV article for a second.
Okay.
And talk about some of the specific hurdles that African immigrants face in that region.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Because I remember you said that sub-Saharan African immigrants, on average, have higher poverty rates.
Yeah.
And it sounds like those disparities are especially stark in the DMV.
They are. Why is that?
Our 2024 article kind of sheds some light on it.
Okay, so what's going on in the DMV?
Well, even though there's a big concentration of African immigrants in that area, the article points out that there's a real lack of, like, culturally specific resources and support systems.
Really?
Yeah, and that absence can really make a difference in how WAD people integrate and thrive.
So even though they have a strong community presence, they might not necessarily have access to the support that they need.
That's the point.
Okay.
It's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah.
Like, they're there,
yeah,
but they're not fully supported.
It makes me wonder, like, what are the specific support systems that are missing?
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
When you're new to a culture, a new system, having those resources that are tailored to your specific needs can make a huge difference. So things like language classes, job training programs, legal assistance, cultural centers.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Those are all key to helping people adjust and connect.
And overcome those initial hurdles.
Exactly, and feel like they can actually thrive.
Yeah, because it's not just about learning English or finding a job.
Right,
It's about
belonging.
Yeah.
It's about feeling supported.
Right.
Feeling like you can actually make it in this new place.
Yeah, and the DMV article also talks about how language and cultural differences can just make daily life more difficult.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like, imagine trying to do basic things.
Yeah.
Like going to the doctor.
Right.
Enrolling your kids in school.
Yeah.
Even just going to the grocery store or the bank.
Right.
When you're not familiar with the language or the cultural norms.
I mean, we take that stuff for granted.
Totally.
But
it's not easy.
No, it must be super stressful.
Yeah, especially when you don't have the tools or the support.
Yeah, and you're in a new environment, trying to figure it all out.
It's like being dropped into a maze without a map.
Yeah.
You might find your way eventually, but it's going to be way harder.
Yeah, more frustrating.
Right.
Without the right guidance.
Yeah, you need that guidance.
So what's being done to address all of this? Like, are people recognizing this lack of support?
There's definitely more awareness now.
Okay.
And the article highlights some cool initiatives.
Okay.
Like, for example, the Maryland governor.
Okay.
Governor Wes Moore, he actually proclaimed September as African Heritage Month.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a good step toward recognizing and celebrating these communities.
But it takes more than just symbolic gestures, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like, are there concrete actions being taken to give more support?
There are organizations like the Ethiopian Community Center and the Ethiopian Community Development Council.
Okay.
They're doing really great work.
Okay, what kind of stuff?
They offer all kinds of things.
Well, yeah.
Language classes, job training, even business development assistance, cultural events.
Wow, so they're really trying to fill those gaps.
Yeah, they're trying to provide those vital resources.
That's awesome to see.
It's inspiring.
Yeah.
It shows the resilience of these communities. They're not just waiting for someone to fix things.
Right.
They're taking action.
Yeah.
Building their own support systems.
It's like they're creating their own opportunities.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges.
Yeah.
But I also want to highlight the contributions.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
That these immigrants are making.
Absolutely.
Because they're making a huge impact.
They are.
In so many different ways.
It's multifaceted. They're enriching our culture, bringing new perspectives, traditions, contributing to the economy in tons of ways.
Yeah, it's easy to focus on the negative and forget about all the good
it's true.
the immigrants bring.
Absolutely.
And there's one particular contribution that I think gets overlooked a lot.
What's that?
Remittances.
Oh, yeah, remittances.
Break that down for me.
Sure. So remittances are the money that immigrants send back to their home countries.
Okay.
Usually to support their families.
Right.
And it's a huge part of the global economy.
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why that would be a priority.
Oh, yeah.
But what makes it so significant?
Well, the amount of money is mind-blowing.
Okay.
Like in 2018, remittances from the U.S. to sub-Saharan Africa peaked at $48 billion.
$48 billion?
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
That's not just a little bit here and there.
No, it's a huge flow of capital.
And that's...
And it's so important for a lot of families and communities in sub-Saharan Africa. It's used for basic needs, education, starting businesses, even supporting entire economies.
Wow, it's like this invisible economic lifeline.
It is connecting immigrants here to their loved ones back home.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful example of how interconnected the global economy is and the impact that immigration has on both sides.
Okay, so we've got this huge amount of money going back to sub-Saharan Africa.
Right.
But are all countries benefiting equally?
That's a great question.
Because it seems like it wouldn't be evenly distributed.
It's not that simple.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so Nigeria receives the most remittances out of any country in sub-Saharan Africa.
Wow.
It got $17.2 billion in 2020.
Wow.
But that huge amount only represents about 4% of Nigeria's total GDP.
So even though they're getting the most money,
it's
not as crucial.
Yeah, they're not as reliant on it.
Still, their economy.
Exactly. Compared to some other countries, like Somalia and South Sudan, they get less overall. But it makes up a way bigger chunk of their economy. Like in Somalia, remittances are 35% of GDP.
Wow.
And in South Sudan, it's 30%.
Okay, so the impact is totally different.
Totally different.
Depending on the country.
Yeah, depending on the economic context. And it makes you wonder, how does that affect things like economic development, political dynamics?
Yeah, that's like a whole other deep dive.
Oh, absolutely.
We could do a whole episode on that.
Yeah, but it's so complex.
It's fascinating.
It is.
But yeah, that's a lot to unpack.
That's the thing about this topic. The more you learn, the more you realize how much more there is to discover.
I feel that way all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on, there's one more aspect of sub-Saharan African immigration that I think we need to touch on.
What's that?
And it's a sensitive topic.
Right.
But it's important.
It is, yeah.
And that's the unauthorized immigrant population.
Okay.
Because obviously that's part of this story too.
It's part of the reality.
Yeah. So how do we approach this?
I think we just got to be sensitive and nuanced.
Yeah.
Remember that these are real people, real families.
Yeah, not just numbers.
Not just statistics.
We're talking about individuals who for all sorts of different reasons have chosen to come here without authorization.
It's a choice that comes with a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I bet.
So the Migration Policy Institute estimates that there were around 261,000 unauthorized immigrants from sub-Saharan Africa living in the U.S. in 2019. And that's about 2% of the total unauthorized immigrant population.
So a relatively small percentage overall.
But still a significant number.
Yeah, it's still a lot of people. And I imagine their experiences are quite different than folks who come here legally.
They face a lot of obstacles. The fear of deportation, limited access to health care, education. Often they're exploited by employers.
That's tough.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It sounds really precarious.
It is, and stressful.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that these are people trying to make a life for themselves and their families.
Yeah.
And they're often making really difficult choices.
Yeah, it's not a simple decision.
No, it's complex.
To come here without authorization.
Yeah, and there are so many different reasons why people do it.
Right. It could be economic hardship.
It could be that.
Political instability back home.
Yeah, violence.
Yeah.
It's a combination of factors.
Yeah, it's about understanding their situations.
Right.
And recognizing their humanity.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not about jumping.
Not about labels. Yeah. It's about empathy.
Yeah, right.
And this is where things can get a little political. You know, there are strong opinions on both sides. It's good to be aware of those, but we don't have to endorse any particular stance.
Right. Our goal is just to present the information
in
a balanced way.
Yeah. Let our listeners make up their own minds.
Right. We're not here to push any agenda.
We're just presenting the facts.
And I think we've done a good job of that.
I think so, too.
Like, we've laid it all out.
We've shown the nuances.
Yeah, and we haven't made any judgments.
Yeah, no judgment.
About people's choices or their situations.
Yeah.
Now, while we're on the topic of complex realities, there's a specific program I think is worth mentioning here.
What's that?
DACA.
Oh, yeah, DACA.
The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program.
Right, right.
Because this has been a lifeline.
It has.
For a lot of young people.
Absolutely.
Who were brought here as kids without authorization.
Yeah.
And as of December 2021, there were about 3,300 DACA recipients from sub-Saharan Africa.
So they're a small but important part of the DACA population.
Yeah, and I think their stories are particularly powerful.
They are.
Because they really highlight that human cost of these political debates.
Absolutely.
About immigration. Because we're talking about young people who have grown up here.
Right.
Who consider the U.S. their home.
Yeah, this is their home.
But they face this uncertain future.
Yeah.
Through no fault of their own.
It's not their fault.
And it just requires empathy.
It does.
Understanding from all sides.
Yeah, regardless of your political stance.
It's a really tough situation.
It is.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on.
It is, yeah.
Because it brings it back to that human element.
Right. Behind all the stats and the policies are real people whose lives are deeply impacted by this.
It's easy to forget that.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the numbers.
It is.
But it's important to remember.
All right. Well, this has been a really long and winding deep dive.
It has.
But I think it's been a worthwhile one.
I think so, too.
We've learned some surprising things.
We have.
We've challenged some assumptions.
Yeah, busted some myths.
Hopefully sparked some good conversations.
Hopefully.
About this incredibly dynamic and growing population.
And I hope our listeners come away with a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
A desire to learn more. And a willingness to engage with this in a nuanced and compassionate way.
Absolutely, because this is a complex issue.
It is.
With no easy answers.
Yeah, but it's important to talk about it.
It is.
And to keep learning, keep asking questions.
Absolutely. As we wrap up today,
I
keep thinking back to that 16-fold increase.
I know, right?
In sub-Saharan African immigration.
It's wild.
Since 1980.
It really makes you think.
It does. Like, how is this continued growth going to shape the U.S.
in
the coming decades?
It's a big question.
It's a huge question.
I mean, we're not just talking about numbers, right? We're talking about cultural shifts, economic changes, maybe even political realignments.
It's a dynamic process.
It is.
Yeah, and the ripple effects
are
going to be felt everywhere.
It's going to touch every part of American society.
It feels like we're watching a new chapter unfold.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like right before our eyes.
Yeah, a new chapter in American history.
And like any good story, this one's full of potential challenges and a little bit of uncertainty.
Of course.
But that's what makes it so interesting to study.
Yeah.
We get to see how these new perspectives, these new experiences are going to change the American story.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder that demographics aren't just numbers.
Right.
They're about real people.
Yeah, real life.
Real stories.
Absolutely.
And in this case, the sub-Saharan African immigrant experience is so diverse. You can't just lump everyone together.
No generalizations.
Yeah.
We've got refugees, highly skilled professionals, families,
entrepreneurs, all trying to make a life here.
Exactly.
It's a tapestry of experiences.
Beautiful tapestry.
Yeah.
Each thread adding something unique.
And this story's not over yet.
No, it's just a beginning.
I mean, will this growth continue? How will these communities adapt?
Yeah.
How will they contribute to the U.S. in the years to come?
These are the questions that we need to be thinking about.
They're big questions. There are no easy answers.
Nope.
But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
The future of the U.S. is connected to the experiences and contributions
Absolutely.
of immigrants from sub-Saharan Africa.
No doubt about it.
And I think we need to go beyond just talking about integrating immigrants.
Okay.
And really start embracing their contribution.
I like that.
What if we saw diversity as a strength, not a challenge?
That's a good way to look at it.
What kind of future could we build then?
It's a powerful question.
It is.
And I hope our listeners will keep exploring it.
Yeah.
Because embracing diversity isn't just about being politically correct.
Right.
It's about recognizing that our differences make us stronger, more innovative, more resilient.
Yeah. It's about creating a society where everyone feels like they belong.
Yes.
Like they have the opportunity to thrive.
Regardless of where they're from or how they got here.
So to wrap up, I just want to encourage everyone to stay curious.
Yeah.
Keep learning.
Keep asking questions.
Yeah. And keep engaging with these issues.
Absolutely.
In a nuanced and compassionate way.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Nuance and compassion.
And as always,
yeah,
we've got tons of resources in the show notes.
Oh, yeah. Check those out.
If you want to dive deeper.
Dive in. Get curious.
Yeah. Keep those brains buzzing.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.